Well, I thought some people might be interested in my wristwatch collection, so I'll go through each of them. I know it's not strictly a weapons related video, but there's stuff in the channel name and I know a lot of people find wristwatches interesting. So we'll start off on the far left, and I'm not including any digital watches in this because I've got a few, but I obviously prefer analogues. Now, the more observant of you might be able to notice this is a German World War II infantry watch, or at least one of the military parts watches. I'm not completely sure myself. And the time's not correct on it because it's a wind up, and because it's getting so old it doesn't keep time properly. So well, I think the actual seconds are accurate, but as in you'd have to wind it up every 10 minutes to keep it going, which is completely impractical. I think it's been rehoused at least once. The story behind it is my grandfather traded for it when he was stationed in Germany after the war had actually ended. And he used it when he worked at the sort of Morris Motors plant in Cowley for sort of 20-30 years. And the watch, as you can see, it actually still goes if you keep winding it up, but obviously you need to wind it more and more to keep it going than it obviously used to have done. So it's probably been rehoused a couple of times, but you can see it's got that iconic look to it that if you go on Google Images and look at the sort of German World War II watches, they're all that style. Some of them have a brand name around there, but they all generally look like that. As I said, it's been rehoused. I think it's a new strap that's been put on it, but you can see it's still the original type of thing. Next we have a Lorus sports watch, which is one that I use for work because it's one of those watches that's cheap enough that it looks interesting and keeps the time properly, and it's got a chrono and everything, but not, you know, so expensive that if I knock it around and it gets scratched, that obviously it's a real loss because there's already a couple of minor scratches on it from where I've hit it on shelving racks and things. So chronograph works, it's got a date on there, and you've got a 24-hour clock on the right, and underneath it's got sort of the Lorus sort of little symbol there, if you can see that. And what makes Lorus interesting that some people don't know is it's actually Seiko's sort of cheaper brand, and Seiko is, you know, a well-known watch manufacturer for making good watches. So that's quite interesting. Now we have the Fossil Grant with the black face. This was my first proper analog watch, you know, a decent quality analog watch at least. Fossils are interesting because they're one of those brands which aren't really all that overpriced, and the watches look very interesting for how much they cost. I got this in a sale after Christmas in 2013 for I think it was about £50. It was apparently reduced from 100. But you don't find Fossils that really, even at full price, retail much over 100. And yeah, I've had it over a year. I've had no problems with it losing time or anything. Battery hasn't needed to be replaced. So, you know, this was originally my formal sort of watch. It's got a 24-hour clock, you can probably see on the right. Left, it's got a 30-minute chronograph. And I don't know if there's actually anything on the underside of that. Not really, just a bit of dirt and it's saying Fossil. So I ought to really sort of clean it off. Next is the most recent watch I brought. It is a Rotary sort of cream dial watch. It's got the chronograph, as you can see, and the date and 24 hours on there. I quite like the look of this because PointTEC do some Zeppelin watches, and one of their watches looks very similar to this, although I prefer the Zeppelin one, but this was reduced to about 50 quid, normally retailing well over 100, so I thought why not go for it. It actually looks a bit better on camera than it does in person, in the sense that you can see the minute and hour dials better in the camera viewfinder than you can actually seem to on the watch itself. Although they've got that glow-in-the-dark coating on there, so when the lighting's a bit different, sometimes it is easier to see the dials. But yeah, it's a nice watch. It's got a brown leather strap, and, you know, overall it's quite nice. And on the right, we have my favourite of all the watches, and the one I paid the most for, the Yonkers Ju52 watch, made by PointTEC, and it's part of their Junkers range of watches. And this has, the date on the right side of it, and a second and minute and obviously hour, sort of normal watch, and then the little red arrow you can see pointing at the 7 is the 24-hour clock. So and you see, because you can see on the little small dials it says 14. So yeah, because it's just about coming up to 2 o'clock, that's on the 14. I think, yeah, the Junkers is definitely most stylish. and it's my favourite. And PointTEC do some really nice watches. I'm tempted to buy a skeleton watch at some stage because I would quite like a skeleton watch. Oh, and I didn't manage to show you in the other video of it because it didn't come out very well on the camera, but hopefully I can aim it about a bit and you can see it. But it's got this lovely, turn it around the right way, it's got this lovely engraving of a JU52 on the bottom, which is very nice. And there are other watches in the JU52 series or the PointTEC Yonkers series that have sort of the cockpit style things on. With this one you can hopefully just about see it on the camera, but it's got sort of that corrugated sheet metal look to it, which is designed to look like the side of a JU52. Oh, and another interesting thing of this, it's got the Yonkers symbol actually on the side of the watch, which looks quite nice. A lot of thought put into that. And the strap's interesting as well because it has this dual buckle, which most watches don't. And I like and don't like that because it makes the watch more secure on your wrist. Obviously, it's less likely to fall off. The problem is if you need to punch new holes in it, that's quite difficult to do because you'd have to do them completely parallel like they are on there. And the watch is slightly too big for my wrist, so I have to wear it further up compared to the other watches. Another thing to note about the fossils, which is quite nice, is that, and I don't know if I show you the underside of this one, is there anything interesting on there? It just says Rotary and all that. But yeah, an interesting thing to note about the fossils is that they have probably the best straps. I mean, JU52 watch probably has the nicest strap out of them, but for most of the major brands, the fossils actually have much better straps than all the other watches. And that's mostly because Fossil is famous for making wallets and things like that, so their leather work is actually very good. But yeah, overall, I like all these watches. I'm saying I'm getting a bit into collecting these. It's something I'm trying not to do because obviously you're paying normally 50 to 100 plus for analogues, which are decent quality, but there's something very appealing about analog watches. You know, as I said, I used to mostly wear digitals, but analogues actually keep their time better for some reason. I have no idea why. Because with digitals, normally every month you have to reset it by about 2 to 5 minutes, where it's either gained or lost time. Whereas these analogues, you know, I can get them out, you know, once, twice a year to change the time zone on them, and I've found that it's, you know, within a minute accurate, so that's quite good. I mean, I didn't set them all at the same time, because you can see some of them are probably about a minute ahead of each other, and I didn't probably set them all off of the same clock, but yeah, analogues are certainly nicer to look at, and you know, they're more interesting as timepieces. So there's my collection of them. Let me know what watches you have in the comments if you've got anything else that's interesting, and I'll probably be getting some more at some stage, even though I don't really need to. But there we go.